Hello everyone, again got no sketches for you today, but we are reviewing chapter 15 of Plagueis. Now I did read this last night, but I was so tired I could not remember what happened in the second half of the chapter. So we open up the chapter on Abora, which is Plagueis' island on, what is it? I think it's Munilist. I could be wrong on that now, but I'm fairly sure it's Munilist. Maybe it's Abora actually. Abora, Star Wars. Yes, it is Munilist. Got it right. Hey. And we've got Plagueis there, who is. We get to see the infancy of his midichlorian manipulation, and he's able to bring down the natural force bubble that the Yinkori have, or Yinchori. I'm going to say Kori, I think. That the Yinkori have, and he's finally able to mind trick one and bring him under his influence. And we get a bit of insight into how the Sith made the right move to go into hiding. I guess the way I saw it, it was going into hiding. The way I saw it, them going into hiding means that there won't be as many beings to rise up and mind trick them. And we start to get to see a bit into the Sith philosophy again, and how, while toppling the Jedi Order and the Republic was essential to the task of restoring order to the galaxy, that goal belongs to the realm of the ordinary, as it's put in the book, and that's to the world that was nothing more but a byproduct of eternal struggle between the light and dark forces, both of which were beyond the concepts of good and evil, as it says in the book. Well, good or evil, not good and evil, but you know what I mean. It goes on to explain that the greater goal of the Sith was toppling the Force itself, and, as it says, becoming the embodiment of the galaxy's animating principle. And that is quite in line with the Sith, honestly, with what we've been taught through the book, how they dominate the Force. They see themselves as the masters of the Force, not servants of the Force like the Jedi. And we get to see how the Sith were a bit dismissive of the fact that there were of the Celestials, the Mother, the Father, the Son and the Daughter. Because even the theoretical existence, which they were real, but they don't know that, and how the theoretical existence of them had such little relevance on making the Force subservient to them. So they just viewed it with disdain. And Plagueis kind of reflects a bit on the on midichlorian manipulation, and how some Sith had gotten halfway across the bridge between death and life, and becoming the master of the Force, and how they got stuck halfway trying to gain power in the world, in the real world and galaxy, and it trapped them between being able to reach full immortality and power in the Force, and it stopped them from reaching that. And they're never given the Sith guidance, and they're never given guidance from there. To Plagueis just meant it attested to the fact that their influence had been negligible, and had long since faded from the world, as he says. anyway, Plagueis starts to think about how he could manipulate the midichlorians. He has made a murderous Yinchori become peaceful, and he wondered if he could turn a peaceful being into a murderer. He wondered, could he influence the leaders of worlds and systems to act into his designs? No matter how, as it's put in the book, iniquitous or inquisitive, I don't know how to pronounce that, but and he then started to wonder, would he one day not only conquer surviving death, but creating life as well? And he thought perhaps he maybe could achieve that power, but not until the Jedi Order not until the light side and the Jedi Order were removed from the galaxy. That was something he needed to wait until to do then. But anyway, Plagueis, Palpatine, not Plagueis. This part of the chapter goes to Palpatine, and it's him visiting Dathomir, and we learn that Plagueis had pretty much worked to pretty much taken advantage of all Palpatine's weaknesses. As it says in the book, from the start of his apprenticeship with Plagueis, his master had demanded to know what Palpatine regarded as his greatest strength, so he would know how best to undermine him, know his greatest fear, so that Plagueis would know which to force Palpatine to face, to know what Palpatine cherished the most, so that Plagueis could take that from him, and to know the things that Palpatine craved, so that Plagueis could deny him. And through the restrictions, or as Plagueis said, through recognition, or as it's put in the book, or perhaps recognition on Plagueis' part for his apprentice's unabated craving to visit Sith worlds, Palpatine landed on Dathomir because of all the restrictions. And it's not really made clear why he's on Dathomir, I don't think. I think it is because it's similar to the Sith worlds. Actually, no, I just read through that again, because I have the book up while I'm going through this, because I was needing to refresh my memory, because again I read it last night, and I was a bit tired when reading it. I think Palpatine was travelling there because he didn't want to be restricted or such, but anyway, as he's there in the Blue Desert City, he feels a pulse of Force energy, and it turns out to be a Night Sister who has an infant in a bag, and she goes up to Palpatine, having sensed her Force powers, and she's saying that he seems to be a man of intelligence and influence, and now the rest are rabble. And as it turns out, it is a Force-sensitive Sabrak, which turns out to be the later Darth Maul, just Maul at this point though. And Palpatine is... It feels quite Jedi-like in this moment, where he's just kind of like talking about, well, it doesn't feel very like Palpatine, but let me read through it again actually. Okay, actually reading through it, he seems a bit more manipulative. So yes, Palpatine then. And Palpatine is being a bit manipulative to this Night Sister, saying, "Oh, you say that he is a gift, yet you lie. Have you had dealings that led you into such depths that you were parts with your own family and stuff?" and it turned, and he pretty much is viewing the Zabrak as pretty much nothing more but a night brother, and she is trying to convince Palpatine that no, I want you to take him, I want you to take him, I want you to save him from Night Sister Mother Talzin. And it's not really made clear why she's wanting to set him free, I guess, but Palpatine eventually takes him, and he just set out to figure out what he was going to do with Maul. As we know, he trains him. But then we get into the second half of the chapter that I had to read through again, and Plagueis is getting all into politics and looking to the future, which again I don't think that it doesn't feel very, I guess, much to Plagueis' character, to at least to what we were establishing with his character in the latter half, in the towards the end of part 1 of the book. He seemed to be very focused on the present, but I guess you could say that this is him acting within the present problems and trying to figure out what they're going to do when they, as they approach their goals and get to those certain intended milestones for those goals. And he's talking about, like, well, despite what the Grand Protectorate and Black Sun wants, they need to allow the Hydian Way and Rimmer trade routes. They think that the Trade Federation is seeking to increase control of multi-system shipping, and that the dangers of putting the Federation's clients in the Senate happens when the Senate ignores the needs of the worlds, and they uproar for being neglected, and well, the Republic receives backlash, and Palpatine and Damas can harvest the benefits of that. They're making the Republic look, well, negligent and weaker, and they can take advantage of that. He mentions that he should encourage Ars Veruna to form that space corps he was talking about in chapter 14 to defend Naboo against the Federation, but when they do make him king, they will where did I put keep in my notes? No, king. When they do make him king, they are going to lead him into a morass that will appear to be of his own making, as it's put in the book. And Plagueis is noting that the public are getting more angry and hateful and fearful, and he says it signals the loss of faith in the Force, and that the light is being pushed by the darkness and is waning, that the universe is seeming more harmful than comforting, and in such times people are customary to look for solutions by enacting harsh laws, ostracism of strangers, and warfare. Again, I'm reading through my notes here. Much more neatly arranged in chapter 13, thankfully. I made sure to do that. And Plagueis mentions that once the Republic falls, the Jedi will be but a memory, and beings will have nowhere to turn to but the two Sith. Because, of course, with the Republic being negligent, they are promising that they will provide stability. They're thinking that they will promise to provide stability, a list of enemies, weapons capable of decimating star systems, and dual-seal prisons that they can feel secure in. And Plagueis mentions they'll need the dark side to help them in dictating the future, shaping the future. And they'll see to that, and once the Senate issues are behind them, they can set the stage for what was to come, for what would be next, with the promise of unlimited funding, guilds and unions will ally, and the hive species will turn something like pincer and claw to manufacturing weapons in the absence of conflict or warfare, I think, as it's put in the book. And Palpatine mentions, but the Jedi will try to do something as the Republic weakens, and they could possibly try to take coup of it. And Plagueis takes note of it, but he knows the Jedi are becoming weaker and becoming more lost, and that they don't really, and that it won't really be too much of a problem. And he mentions about Darth Gravid, or Gravid. Sorry, Gravid sounds better. And he goes on to talk about how Tenebris and his master tried to engineer a virus targeted specifically for Jedi, but he compares it to them thinking, well, it was as if that light, it was as if they were targeting different intermediaries. It was as if they were treating the Force as if the light and dark communed with different intermediaries, intermediaries. You know what I'm talking about, hopefully. And to try and sway the galaxy and to try to remove the premature light side of that and sway the galaxy into the darkness. But in reality, as Plagueis puts it, they were those intermediaries. I really can't say it, and I'm probably messing it up right now. But those ones are just the midichlorians, and even then, Palpatine mentions it wouldn't have worked. It just wouldn't. It would have required having an individual assassin for each Jedi, and there was no way that you could keep that many mouths mute, because there was about 10,000 Jedi by the time the Clone Wars. There's more here, probably. And Plagueis mentions that no army can overwhelm the Jedi. The Sith were tens of thousands in the past, so they couldn't beat the Jedi. And he mentions that once the galaxy teemed with warriors and ships, now only isolated bands of mercenaries and star system defense forces are what they have. And it's why they think they must, and it's why they are striving to bring the galaxy to a state where barbarism is the norm. Palpatine mentions that the Jedi needs to be felled from within and be lured into a trap of their own devising, taking advantage and exploiting their vanity and blind obedience to the Republic, and to make them appear as the enemies of peace and justice rather than the guardians. And Plagueis, he takes that into consideration, and even notes that the survivors, even if there are any survivors, they'll have to go into hiding. But Plagueis does warn Palpatine they have to be careful not to make it a martyrs, I think I pronounced that right, as they want the galaxy to turn their backs on the light side, not make it seem like there's a prejudice against the Jedi. But Plagueis then brings up an old dealing that we heard of in part 1 of the book, with Kerid Santh and how he died, and that Tenebris and Noro Sina they had a common enemy and they are partnered up, and so presumably Tenebris sent Plagueis, so presumably Tenebris left orders for Plagueis to kill Santh, and with a dish that could be a bit poison, that can be very poisonous if not served correctly. He saw Santh take that bite from that dish, and he then started to use the Force to choke him and kill him that way. And he mentions Palpatine, they'll need to do a similar assassination to feed our king, because his sentiment has become a liability. His belief of the Trade Federation needing to be abolished has put him at is being a liability. And so he said that he wouldn't have the luxury of being in person when he's killed though, because they need to keep Palpatine's. They need to be able to have Palpatine have deniability to being involved. But it will open up the position of Senator of Naboo to Palpatine. And so that's really it for this chapter. Again, I had to read through it again second time, that's the second half of it, and I've skimmed through the first bit while doing this video because I didn't realise just how much I forgot about it. But yeah, it was a good chapter. I enjoyed it. Again, I'll probably have to read through all this. I think the problem with Plagueis, though, I think, is that it keeps introducing a lot, and I do mean a lot. That it's hard. That at times it can be a bit hard to keep up with. I was able to keep up with what was going on with chapter 14. Here, there was so much proposed in the latter half of chapter 15. It's actually quite difficult to try and keep track of. But yeah, hopefully I'm looking forward to see where the book goes, and I don't know where I'm going with this. I'll see you all next time. Bye.